Welcome everybody to a discussion on implementing a quality curriculum in a differentiated instruction English classroom. Now, just like the couple in the Far Side comic who are driving into the middle of nowhere, if students can get just as lost in a classroom where there's no point and there's no work driving towards a learning goal. I briefly asked you why it isn't enough to have a fun, vibrant classroom. And not only do you still need learning outcomes, but if students feel comfortable, that's great. But the point of them feeling comfortable is so they can learn a high-quality curriculum. Again, we see that interplay in between the categories here. What I'll also say is that having a quality curriculum based on a broader learning goal, or learning goals, again stimulates this growth-based mentality. If students know what they're trying to ultimately achieve, they won't stop if they finish their assignment. They can go get the resources in your room to help work on their project. They can do some extra work to maybe get started on something else to support those learning goals. And again, we see not only can a quality curriculum inform a really growth-based model, but also notice having that curriculum really depends on having the right resources in the right environment. Likewise, having the right resources in your room depends on your learning goals. That's one of the reasons that I strongly press upon you that it's not enough to implement one of these topics in the vacuum. They all need to be together. So let's talk about the brain science behind having a high-quality curriculum. Now, first of all, students need to receive learning goals, not just clear, but achievable. Students who believe they can accomplish a task are likely to attempt it and remember it, then compared to students who have reason to believe they can't. There's the idea called the zone of proximal development, that explains students who feel slightly more challenged than super easy work or super hard work. If they have if they have work that's just beyond them, a little bit past their comfort zone, they'll experience a state of flow, that energetic mental state that helps people work. Now, this idea of the zone of proximal development, again, really based on that growth-based mentality that if students are willing to work, the task isn't boring or too hard, and they have the right social environment, where environment comes in again, and the right learning scaffolding, they can learn. Additionally, goals need to make sense to students. The brain constantly strives to find patterns and meaning in the world. Brain scans have shown that students working on cogent, meaningful work show increased neural stimulation, particularly the parts of the brain responsible for long-term retention. And I really stress that long-term part, because the short-term working memory that we have as humans is just simply limited. Earlier studies into working memory have shown that humans can hold up to 7 pieces of information at once. More recent studies have said now it's more like 3 to 4, depending on the student, their ability level, and their age. That's simply not enough information for students to rotely memorize something and then simply forget it the next day. In order to create sustainable learning outcomes, goals need to be clear, they need to be meaningful, and they need to be achievable. And they need to activate long-term memories and the parts of the brain that are responsible for memory retention. Let's apply that in the English classroom. I suspect a lot of you already base your lessons around essential questions, EQs, or the idea of know, understand, do, or KUDs. Not only is it important to have clear learning goals, those learning goals are the same for everyone. Everybody learns the same principles. Again, there's a very common misconception that differentiating instruction means giving less work to less capable students and the most work to your overachievers. Not only does that discourage students who are struggling from working, but it also prevents students who are really achieving from really being interested in the subject. If they think they're just going to get more of the same work by finishing it on time, they really don't have an incentive to complete the work and hand it in early. Now, don't get me wrong. Students will have different levels of sophistication when they learn these goals. But they're ultimately learning towards those same goals. For example, if you're teaching The Great Gatsby, sometimes some students might not pick up on Fitzgerald's language. They might not pick up on some of the social cues that Jay Gatsby misses. But students can still get the overall arching themes of the book. The class conflict, the inability to escape the past or reinvent yourself completely. Those are ideas that all students can get at with varying levels of sophistication. Now, actually, excuse me, before I continue, it's really easy to conflate differentiated instruction with creative lesson planning too. If students are entertained but don't see a larger point to the instruction, they simply won't retain that knowledge. So having discussions linking novels to broader themes can be a great way to put books into the right context for students. Studying Native Son, talk about race and class issues. Reasonably, if your class can handle it. If you're studying Macbeth, talk about power and corruption and the idea of insanity. We teach these stories not because they're boring. We teach them because they represent essential parts of the human condition. They existed in Shakespeare's time, they existed in the 19th century, and they exist now. So use a modern context to help your students better understand them. Speaking of better understanding them, there's a concept called tiering, in which you provide the right scaffolding and support for students who need that most support. Getting back to the idea of the zone of proximal development, where they said that students can learn if they're motivated and they have the right learning structures. It's helpful to think of them as ways to get students to the next level. Maybe when you want to take struggling students, make them proficient. You want to make proficient students advanced. You want to make advanced students transcend the work. You can do that in a variety of ways. You can, as an example, I had my students create Facebook characters or Facebook pages for different characters in The Great Gatsby for one project. For struggling students, they got Jay and Nick, the main characters, but they had the most descriptions, so students didn't have to really dig through complicated text to find the answers. And gradually, as the project became more sophisticated for different groups, there were less scaffolding, so less structure, less mandates for what I need on the Facebook page, and some groups got a harder character than others. Jay and Nick, a lot of information, but someone like Clipspringer, I would only feel comfortable having the most advanced students tackle that because he gets so little time in the book. So just to recap here, based on neuroscience, students need to perceive goals as achievable and make sense. And by providing learning scaffolding, making lessons more comfortable, and basing them around essential knowledge, you'll encourage that growth mindset in students and get them to connect better in class. I want to end by reflecting on Mr. Filazzo's article. Now, he offers a specific way to foster an environment in which students are best able to learn. He considers adding a new tradition to the classroom routine. Students write reflections each Friday. One or two things that happened to them during the week that they thought was good. I want you to think what makes this a potentially great piece of a differentiated instruction curriculum. It's got the elements there. But based on and given the ideas of neuroscience and how to apply these principles into the English classroom, what necessary adjustments would you need to make here and why? Pleasure being here. I'll see you for assessment.